But yeah, let's get down to business, guys. Florida versus Vegas Golden Knights. The Florida Panthers have not made the Stanley Cup Finals since 1996, have not won a Stanley Cup yet. But the last time they appeared to the Stanley Cup Finals is in '96. And then you have the Golden Knights, who's been 6 times. In the wait, it's 6 seasons there,
It's their sixth season, yeah.
and they went to the Stanley Cup. This is the third time.
This is gonna be their second time in since 2018, since they made the Stanley Cup Finals, which is
second time, but they were in the conference 3 times, right?
Which is incredible.
Yeah,
that's if you really think of that, if it's okay, so we're 2008. It's five. It's their sixth season. Basically, a third of the time they've gone to the Cup Finals as an expansion team in the NHL. That's incredible. That's actually insane if you really think about it.
Most fans have been really, really spoiled. Like all they've known is competition and like high level of competition and competing every single year. I think they missed the playoffs once, if I'm not mistaken. That was last year.
Last year, that's correct. Yeah,
and they were riddled with injuries at the same time.
So six seasons, made the playoffs 5 times, conference finals 3 times, and Stanley Cups twice. That's
insane. Know
what? What I'm happy about this year is we're gonna first have a new champion.
Yeah, that's
a new first time ever champion.
Yeah.
2, both. I mean, Florida is more of a Cinderella story than Vegas.
They're absolutely a Cinderella story this year. You know what's crazy? Had the Pittsburgh Penguins not if the Pittsburgh Penguins didn't blow it the last 2 games of the season, especially
one game,
just one game against Chicago.
We wouldn't be talking about this.
No, we really wouldn't. We clearly would not be having this conversation, and we'd be getting a fucking 16th overall draft pick instead of now a 31 or a 32.
And not only that, if you look at the standings right now, I went to to prep for my intro. I wanted to make sure I was saying the right numbers, and I noticed that Florida finished with 92 points and Calgary 93 and didn't make the playoffs. It's because of the new format, but how crazy is that too?
Well, it's because
the Calgary fans.
It's the conferences too. Well,
it happened to us once. Remember that year that we didn't make the playoffs and Colorado made it, and they had more points than we had more points than Colorado.
Oh, I think is it the season where the I think Claude Julien was coaching. It was when that same season that where Palin came and played his last game.
Yes, that season there we had more points in a playoff position, but we got eliminated.
Well, it just goes to show that the Eastern Conference the last couple of years has been the stronger conference compared to the West.
Yes.
So, this Florida team, it comes down to 2 major players. One being Matthew Tkachuk and the other being Sergei Bobrovsky. Mm-hmm. If we can praise Matthew Tkachuk all we want. I mean, like he basically swept the Carolina Hurricanes, 4-game winners, 3 of them in overtime. But you cannot mention the Florida Panthers without mentioning Sergei Bobrovsky, because there's that whole debate that I want to get to this later on, but like if Florida wins it, I think Bobrovsky wins the Conn Smythe over Tkachuk.
100%. I mean, he didn't even start the series. He came in game 3 and just blew it out of the water.
He doesn't save that Brad Marchand. What was it? That
breakaway.
He doesn't save
in
that
overtime.
Was it an overtime?
No.
End of the third. The last few seconds of the third.
Again, we're not having this conversation. So it's just you know what? You look at the Florida Panthers, the ripple effect now, whether they win or lose, I think it's a great story, and hopefully it really helps the franchise kind of go to that next level. I'm not saying in terms of the market level as like the Canadians, the Leafs, the Rangers, or even the Bruins if you want, but like, at least they get a few more, at least if they could get half a stadium consistently throughout the season, I think that's somewhat of a success as far as Florida market is concerned.
But
To me, the ripple effect was two things of why the Florida Panthers are where they are right now. It started with Matthew Tkachuk's father saying how that Florida has no pushback. They seem to give up easily. He basically called out the entire team. Okay, Keith Tkachuk basically called out the entire team. And then I want to add another element. It was maybe one of the final games of the season. I think it was against the Leafs where head coach Paul Maurice was fucking yelling at the whole team during a TV timeout, or I think it was a TV timeout. He's yelling at them, saying, "You guys are playing like little fucking bitches." I seriously think it just took those two elements is what had to fuel this team. And then you look at when Matthew Tkachuk wins. What was it? When Florida won game 2, that first overtime win against Boston. There's the video of him, Tkachuk holding the puck. He's saying, "We're going to be back here for game 7." And man, they haven't looked back since.
Look, the DVD, if they win the cup and that DVD of the whole, story of the playoffs, it'd be a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, like you said,
a DVD. When's the last time you bought a DVD?
I haven't, but every time the last DVD I bought was when Italy won the World Cup, and I got the DVD of the championship. But
mine was the Alexei Kovalev instructional video that 100% went to charity. I'm trying to remember if that was the last DVD I ever purchased.
I think Italy's World Cup champ. But all that to say, like you said it, Sam, like what a story. We wouldn't be here if Chicago didn't beat Pittsburgh. We wouldn't be here if Brad Marchand would have scored the final seconds of that game 7 before overtime. All those overtimes against Carolina. Yeah, against Carolina, we went. Florida went to Carolina 3 times in overtime. Yeah. One of them went to 4 overtimes, and anything could have happened, right? So, I think, we say talent, and they do have a lot of talent, but in this case, I see a team full of heart, a team playing the good underdog story, and they played it very well. And not only that, what surprises me the most, besides just sneaking into the playoffs the way they did? Do you remember the last conversation we had about the Florida Panthers last year, where they finished the whole season last year in first overall? They expected to go to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, got eliminated right away, and then they dismantled the team last summer. Not just 1 or 2 trades. They dismantled the team last year, and we all said from having a great team like that to now a bottom team, and they're going to have to start over their franchise building, to that same season, they're in the Stanley Cup Finals. Last year was the team that should have won the Stanley Cup. This year,
if you look
be top bottom 5.
If you were to compare that lineup, I mean, look, they don't have a Matthew Tkachuk, but they have a Jonathan Huberdeau who was, he was almost 100-point player with them. They went and get Claude Giroux up on front. They got Ben Sherratt, who performs in the playoffs. They had oh my God, what's that other defenseman's name there? I'm drawing a memory blank, but he just won with Team Canada at the men's World Championship. He was there too. He's an excellent defenseman. I think a lot of it has to do with momentum, being hot at the right time. I'm also curious to know how healthy these players are, because I don't think anybody on this team right now is playing like they're hurt. At least that's the impression I'm getting. And Gord Miller of TSN said this. He's like, sometimes it's not the best team on paper that wins you a Stanley Cup, but it's the healthiest team that wins a Stanley Cup. And I think that's going to stick with me forever. And I'm kind of looking at I'm looking at a bit of like the Dallas Stars here, who lost against Vegas, and they kind of caught a beating. They showed like they had a bit of hope. They won the 2 in a row. Like, oddly enough, when Jamie Benn was out of the lineup, their captain, but that's their story. And as good as Jake Ottinger played those 2 wins, during the whole series, he didn't look good, at all. And you find out that he had multiple minor injuries. That's especially for a goalie. That's not going to help. Like it's he's still young in his career. I think he got tired as well. But if you look at, I don't know, if you look at the Florida Panthers, like they look like a healthy team. At least they're skating like a healthy team. They're in your face. They hit. They skate fast. They don't look tired. They don't look hurt either. Now I'm wondering if this break that they had, this
That's what
long
I
break,
feel.
I wonder if they're gonna need to shake off the rust the first game, which they probably will. If they lose the first game, I think we could say it's normal, but they're gonna have to win the second game. But if they win the game one, coming back from that long break, oh my god, I think they'll grow momentum even more from there.
Agreed. I think this rest, and I want to hear Chris's thoughts, but I think this rest might hurt them or might benefit. We'll see. Time will tell. We'll find out in 48 hours. But Chris, your thoughts?
I'm gonna do my best not to repeat everything that you guys said because I think you had the most essential points. But if I may reiterate a few things, I think Paul Maurice doesn't get the appropriate amount of credit. The support,
That's true.
like Paul Maurice, maybe it's just a perfect match or a match made in heaven, whatever you want to call it, with these players. But you go back to that game against the Leafs where he absolutely blasted his players. His players have had a fire,
Was the
like a
greatest.
fire under each one of their own asses from that point in time, and they went into the playoffs with that momentum. So, like Paul Maurice, whatever he's doing it right. Number two, this is something that we had mentioned in our predictions before the last round had begun. It makes us look actually really good in that sense. We were mentioning that we didn't think necessarily that Florida was going to be winning the series, but we clearly indicated that if support players and if certain star players would perform, that they would in fact have a good chance and they could in fact win the series. And what did they do? I mean, we named names like Anthony Duclair. We said Montour. We said if Barkov picks it up
Oh
and
my god!
starts
What a
contributing,
goal!
like
That goal, like Carolina fake between the legs, back on his backhand, patient.
yeah.
Oh, what a goal! Yeah,
No, it's
absolutely.
it's just like I know we did not pick Florida to go through in the last round, but the what if factor very much factored into them winning, and it was absolutely outstanding. If I may say, like it's just a big thank you to Florida as much as they're dropping us down in the draft rankings, which does hurt. They single-handedly took out Boston, our rival. They took out Toronto, which was an even bigger pleasure. And then they took out Carolina, which I consider them they've been quite annoying for Montreal for the past few years. So they really took out three teams that I
Bunch of
disliked quite a
jerks.
bit. So it was just very rewarding. It's very rewarding to see them winning. If I
Mhm.
may add another element, you're talking about a team that was the President's Trophy winners from the previous year, very much like the Tampa Bay Lightning, who got swept by Columbus. It was kind of a learning experience that they went through. But
Yeah, I
but
think
then
it's their
I'm
turn.
gonna. It's funny. I guess the core players recall and what they went through and how they went about getting through it. I guess or getting over it more than anything. But I know, like at the same time, they did blow up the team, and it's just a testament to
Mackenzie Weegar.
like
I figured out his name. Mackenzie Weegar is the guy they traded. That's the
yes.
name. Mackenzie Weegar. There you go.
But I do want to say this because we've barely even brushed upon Vegas. I just want to say
Yeah,
the
well,
little tidbit that
we're gonna talk about Vegas because I want to speak
It's a
about them too.
Florida show.
okay. So
Yeah,
then I'll finish off on this, and then I'll say the transitioning point that all enables us to talk about Vegas. But you know, at the beginning of the year, and I'll be the first to admit, when I saw Jonathan Huberdeau going to Calgary, I sincerely thought Florida got fleeced. I
oh, we
thought
all did.
Florida,
Everybody did. We all
yeah,
did.
and
Yeah, yeah.
and you know what? Like, I really have to say, like Matthew Kachuk, I raise my hat to this guy. I think I have a newfound like the guy's such a pain in the ass, and he's fucking annoying to play against, and he beats down on every other the opposing team's player. but that's the type of player you need to win unless you're an absolute elite superstar who can be putting up points and play more on the finesse side. So I just want to say like real hats off to Florida and their skill players and or their key players. I'm so nice, as Sammy mentioned, so nice to see Bobrovsky, just a good guy. Um, Jay Onright's favorite guy right there. I'm so happy to
Back
see
on the
him
case,
performing, and
Bobrovsky.
I'm so happy that team.
Yeah.
That's just. I'll just end it on this. That team it's very rewarding to see. And then talking about just the individual or the transition to talk about Vegas on top of Florida. Well, it's funny because I think it's the first Stanley Cup final in history that the top two scorers or point getters are both American.
Yeah. No, Jack. Okay, you mentioned Jack Eichel.
That's your finesse player
I think.
who's
Well, I think it's a perfect matchup. You could say, do you match up Jack Eichel with Alexander Barkov, or do you match him up against Matthew Tkachuk? But I mean, you look at both of them. Tkachuk 21 points. You have Jack Eichel 18 points, and yet if you watch the games, the guy plays a 200-foot game. He's responsible defensively, probably for like the first time in his career, mostly. After he left that disaster of the Buffalo Sabres, no disrespect to them, but it's funny how in his first playoff appearance, where he's the best player, they're going to the Stanley Cup Finals. Jack Eichel, where's Joey when you need him? Where's Joey when you need him? Like, Joey knows his shit. And yeah, maybe we look back now, hindsight is always 2020, but maybe the Habs should have gone after Jack Eichel. That's a whole other can of worms debate, but look how well he's playing. And this is why he's one of the reasons why Vegas is where they are right now. And it's funny how I think of a player like Jack Eichel, who drafted second overall behind Connor McDavid in 2015. Otherwise, he would have been drafted in 2014. He would have been drafted first overall, but he didn't turn 18 yet. So that's why he was basically a draft late, I guess. And it makes me think a centerman like him, and you think other elite centermen that were playing in these playoffs. Okay, you think who? Like Auston Matthews. Auston Matthews, okay, in that series, did everything he could defensively to help the team. And he was able to, but he couldn't score. You watch a couple of games, when we were watching Florida versus Toronto, there were many times where Auston Matthews back check and did excellent defensive plays. The problem was he just couldn't take it up to the offensive level that he's capable of. Jack Eichel is doing the exact opposite. Not only is he playing well defensively, the guy's putting up points. He may not be scoring a ton of goals, but man, but if you notice against Dallas in 2-3 games, he did the same type of play. Forechecking behind the red line and deep in the offensive zone, creates a turnover, makes these insane blind backhand passes to Jonathan Marchessault a few times, and that's how they're scoring their goals. But that's what a centerman like him has to do, and that's one of the reasons why he's successful. Like we talked about Barkov. Chris mentioned Barkov. Him too, again, in the Calgary series, he was able to play more a two-way role, a 200-foot role, not just defensively. Goes and score a fucking probably the goal of the playoffs, as far as I'm concerned. But this is what it takes. This is where these players that are supposed to be the best players in this league, this is it's their time to shine, and they have to shine if they want to win. Anton Hill, where the fuck did he come from? The Vegas goaltender. Like he looked like, geez, take your pick. Patrick Roy, Marty Brodeur, the Hasek, maybe. Like you know what I mean? And this is what I love about the NHL playoffs, is that like it always happens to the goaltender position where a nobody could suddenly become a somebody and maybe even a hero. Philadelphia in 2010 can thank Michael Leighton that they had a chance to win the Stanley Cup. Hopefully Adin Hill has a longer career than Michael Leighton, because after that he went down to the minors and then we never heard of him ever again. But this is the beauty of the playoffs, and I man, it's going to be so tough later on to predict who's going to win. That there's such an evenly matched team,
But that's why I think, sorry to cut you off, Sam,
No,
but
no,
like
go.
seeing how Florida played against Carolina and seeing how Vegas played against Dallas, I was very worried to see a Carolina Dallas game because I thought it was going to be a very defensive game. Because
I think
you know,
Carolina's not that defensive, but they I don't know what the fuck happened. They just imploded.
but that's why I felt that I was scared that if Dallas made the finals, it'd be a boring finals because of the defensive style they have. Now I'm predicting. Well, I was predicting a Florida Vegas, shootout. Back and forth, offensive. But because you said it right. They're so evenly
matched,
skilled and matched.
Yeah.
And they're going to be so. I have a feeling that they're going to play so conservative that it might be very defensive.
You think?
Because of how, but you know what I mean? Because they play the same style.
It's an interesting take.
Both offensive teams, both high scores, right?
Mhm.
Both hot goalies.
Yeah, it's
you're expecting an explosion, and I'm hoping to see an explosion because that's what we want to see for entertainment. But I feel they're gonna come out and they're gonna game one's gonna be so quiet. Like, okay, who's gonna break the ice? Let's envision what we're. You know what I mean? They're gonna.
Yeah. I mean, I think the coaches, they're gonna try to feel each other out in a sense. Yeah. Go.
Put a pin in that, because when it comes time for predictions, what you just said, Anthony, I so want to build on it, but that'll be in its time later on down the show.
You know what? I kind of to go back, Chris, and you said how we were talking about how certain players have to step it up in order to win. For me, the Dallas Stars, I don't understand. Like, Jason Robertson exploded in this series, and yet they still lost. Like, he was the one player they needed to start scoring goals. He does start scoring goals, and they did not look like the team that played against Seattle.
But as you mentioned, one of their most important players, Jake Ottinger, gets in. If he's fully injured or not, they say it and they repeat it. But your goaltender, and still to this day, I don't want to say you build your whole freaking team around a goalie. Like, I don't want to see another Carey Price situation where you have nothing but Carey Price. But your goalie is so important in the playoffs. Let's go back to Bobrovsky, because I think Bobrovsky, talking about 1-goal games, the guy who has had the most significant impact because of the closeness of the games, he has been one of the single-handed biggest difference makers in the whole playoffs. If your goalie is not going to make the right save at the right time, and unfortunately Ottinger wasn't able to do that, it's a momentum swing. It's a completely different game just off of one shot. So your goalie has to be hot, on top of his game in these moments. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere. And it's as simple as that.
We had this argument many times, and we had this with Zook and Sam when we always said, we don't need a goalie to win, or goalies win cups. Look, we're just spoiled hockey fans who got lucky with a very, could have been a Hall of Famer. Maybe he is. I don't know, but
a generational talent. He was the best goalie for a decade. Easily.
So we got used to, we had the era of Patrick Roy and all this stuff, right? So we always had the best goalies in Montreal that won cups. So we're so used to having this fan base of, we need the best goalie ever. As much as it's nice to have, and we got very lucky so many times with it, you don't need it. You just need a hot goalie in the playoffs. We had this argument so many times, and Colorado won last year with a hot goalie. He wasn't a superstar. He just was a hot goalie. Cam Ward with Carolina was not a superstar. He was a third-string goalie.
You really like him, huh?
But that series really, it's PTSD that series, because it was such a bad year.
Oh my god!
I remember praying to fucking rosaries to win that series. Anyways, long story short,
I was at that game when Koivu got his fucking eye taken out.
That game just turned everything around. I want to break everybody.
For sure.
Matt Murray, not a good goalie at the time, and just had that hot streak.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, sorry, Chris, but at the end of the day, I strongly believe, and yes, it's a bonus to have a Carey Price on your team, but that's why I'm not worried of finding a goalie. Like, I think if we make the playoffs next year or whatever, I'd be confident with Montembeault, for example, and if he finds that streak, that's all you need. And you see it now with Bobrovsky. Like he was just on a hot streak.